Thank you for listening to the BJJ Brick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends. Episode 109 of the BJJ Brick Podcast. I'm Gary. I'm here with my partner in crime, Byron Jabara. How are you today, Byron?
I'm doing pretty good, Gary. I'm excited about this episode. We are bringing Emily Kwok to the show for the first time, and world champion, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, and competitor, and just really great conversation talking with her, and happy to share it with the audience.
Yep. So do not miss the interview portion of our show because Emily is going to teach us a lot, and as always, we're happy to have her, and we're going to learn from her. So thank you, Emily.
Yep. A couple of times in the interview, there's like a phone beep sound, like you're hitting like the 9 button on accident. And I don't know what was up with that, but it's not going to kill you. So,
well, I know it's probably, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Byron Curse. Byron's car, when he would drive it, out of nowhere, the horn would just start honking. He could be at a stoplight, and right next to him could be a couple of guys on motorcycles, a couple of Harley Davidson 1%ers, and Byron's horn would just start going off. So maybe the same thing has now happened to your phone, Byron.
That could be the case, and
could be.
We'll see as the interviews go on if it continues.
Yep.
So, but I was able to cut out a couple of the beeps when we weren't talking, but a lot of them are still in there, and just because the conversation was carrying through them, so I didn't want to make it weird.
Yeah.
I'm already weird enough, Gary.
Yeah, we definitely know. Speaking of weird, as you know, Byron's kind of weird, and we need as much support for the show as possible to help the show out. We do have a audio book. It's called Your First Year in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's only $11.99. A small investment to guide you through your first year in Jiu-Jitsu. It's just like our podcast. It's 2.5 hours of Byron talking about topics that you're going to run into in your first year when you're new, and not necessarily just when you're new. Anybody can get something out of this. Talks about getting ready for tournaments, how to make your game better, stuff like that. So definitely check it out. We'll put a link on the show notes. It's called Your First Year in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Like I said, it's only $11.99. And if you get on our email list, you'll also be able to get some samples, sample chapters from the book. So definitely check it out.
Yep, we're continuing to put stuff into that email list thing. So if you want to get on the email list, we send out an email every Tuesday, just basically show notes of the episode and what happened during the show. And at the bottom of that, you can go and click a link to a Dropbox folder, and there's a bunch of MP3 files in there, Gary. We've got a couple of the chapters from the audiobook. I've got a career day I did on being a firefighter at a high school. I recorded that, and I threw it up on there. So if you're interested in being a firefighter, check out the little audio file on that, and I talked to a bunch of kids about fighting fire. So, and I also threw in some of our most interesting man segments. I just threw them up there on the MP3s wise, so if you want to listen to a bunch of those,
people love that. Yeah, so that's awesome. That is great.
That guy is so interesting. And not interesting. Is the most interesting grappler. So,
yeah. Hey, and speaking of that, we're always looking for more most interesting grappler quotes or whatever you call them. So, if you can think any yourself, send us an email bjjbreak@gmail.com. And if they're funny, they're going to get on the show. So we appreciate all you guys who send them in.
Yep, I'm writing them down and I'm getting them tallied up to have them. I have to go find the most interesting man, or most interesting grappler, and get these recorded again. But once I get a big enough list, I'll go over there and get some recording done. So that's always fun.
Yep, and we always need help coming up with more.
Oh, Gary and I have a good time writing the ones we've written, and we've definitely had some fun, some really great ones sent in by the audience. So that's just awesome to get that sort of information and feedback.
Yeah. Byron, is it the time for the quote of the week?
I guess so.
Hey, we got a good quote this week. I happened to be at my son's wrestling practice the other night, and one of the coaches was talking, and he basically, was talking about his quote, which I thought was perfect. So this is Coach Mike of the Kansas Young Guns. Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Once again, practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And I thought that was awesome. And he was talking to all his wrestlers about you can drill the same move over and over and over and, just put in a ton of time doing it. But if you're missing steps, if you're missing little things, it's not going to be perfect. Let's go to Jiu-Jitsu. If I'm doing an arm bar and I'm missing something and I'm just practicing over and over again and I'm not doing perfect practice, I'm going to have a crappy arm bar. Basically all it's going to do is end up getting passed and I'm going to end up side mounted.
Yeah, it's that's cool that you heard that, and your son's been going to wrestling a lot lately, so that's good for him, and I know he's getting better. But if I got to do 100 armbar drills today, and I'm doing something fundamentally wrong, or I'm making a mistake on all 100 of them, where does it get me, Gary?
It's giving you 100 bad arm bars, and you're probably just going to get passed.
Get my guard passed.
You need to work. You need to practice it perfect, and that's where having good instructors, good training partners, they're going to tell you what you're doing wrong. And speaking of that too, when you're the guy, let's say an arm bar for the guard, and you're in the guard, and somebody's working the arm bar. Tell your training partner if they're missing something. Tell them if it doesn't feel right. Don't just let them go through that. It's up to you as a training partner to help each and every one of your teammates and drilling partners get better. The better they get, the better you're going to get. So it's like one big team. We're all helping each other out.
Yeah. Sometimes you do drills, and you need to realize why you're doing the drill. I think about the armbar drill from Mount, where the guy holds his arm straight up, and you throw your leg over, and you roll back, and you don't even take the arm, and you roll right back up, and you do another one. And that drill is to help you get your leg over their head in a smooth manner without having to give them a lot of space by their elbow. Like, that's the point of that drill. It's not to finish the arm bar. Like, if you did that, if you drilled that and that's how you do an arm bar, you're kind of messing that up. But it's helping your muscle memory, or building that myelin in your brain to where you could fire this technique off and get that part of it. Boom, that's right. So realize why you're doing a particular drill, because a lot of times the drills aren't the full movements. They're part of the movements, or maybe they're trying to help condition you those particular muscles to be able to do that movement in a stronger manner. I mean, there's lots of reasons to do drills, but not always is it to do the entire technique to completion every time.
Right now, one of our previous guests and New York Times bestseller, Daniel Coyle, is smiling because Byron brought myelin into the conversation. So great job, Byron.
Yeah, it was fun having Daniel Coyle on the show. A lot of people talk about 10,000 hours. Daniel Coyle wrote a New York Times best-selling book saying that you don't need 10,000 hours to be world-class. You need is quality training and to learn from your mistakes quickly and to make mistakes again and learn again from those. So he kind of speaks out against the 10,000 hour rule, and that's more about quality than just blind time on the mats, just being there. That doesn't, so, and I agree with that. I mean, yes, 10,000 hours, a lot of time you're going to get to jiu-jitsu if you spend it doing jiu-jitsu, but you can spend some really quality time with some people that can really help you. And if they fix your little mistakes, you can get pretty good pretty quick.
True.
So, speaking of, good coaches and good information, Gary, I think it would be nice. Last week we had an article from John Will. I think we should do it again. He's just got so many. Last
week's was so great when you showed it to me. Let's hit another one. I'm definitely with you.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Gary, we're on episode 109. And we haven't...
109.
We haven't had John Will's articles on here. It's like, what's wrong with
we did on 108 bar.
So 108 was when we first brought him on. So we had a little make-up to, so we'll do 2 back-to-back John Will articles here. So same website. You can go to bjj-australia.blogspot.com or go to bjj.com.au and that'll get you there. Third way is it's on our show notes. You can click on that and find this article. So this one is called Notice Your Improvements. And everybody things like improvements, you think of like big accomplishments, you win a tournament, you get gold, you get your first medal at a tournament, or you tap out that belt that's above you. If you're a white belt, you tap out that first blue belt. That day it will happen, and you'll feel like $1 million that day. But, those are pretty big things. And it's important to notice all of your improvements.
And you know what's so great about this article is this article comes with its own quote. And you're just talking about the big gains, but there's the small gains. And Robert Browning has a quote, "Every joy is gain, and gain is gain, however small." And it's not just going to be, like you said, as a white belt tapping out a blue belt. You're also going to find, very small successes each time. And it could be, as I'm going against a guy, let's say Byron, let's say I'm a brand new, or I've been training a year and I'm going against Byron. Like, it might be just as much as not giving up the first arm bar. I may find a way out of that first arm bar before I get caught in the second arm bar. So there's a lot of little things. It doesn't always deal with winning. I mean, I may pass a guard today that I've never passed before. That's huge. It may not seem that big. I didn't get to tap, but hey, even if I got swept right back, I did pass that guard, which let's say I have never passed that guard before. So, each little thing, there's something each day that we're probably going to do that we'll see some success, and we got to make sure that we realize the success and not just think about it as getting our hand raised.
Life is too short to train for 3 months for a tournament, hard training, and then win it, and then have like a good afternoon and celebrate maybe the next day, get a bunch of likes on Facebook, and then back to the drawing board and back to working for the next one. You need to be celebrating your small accomplishments. And he's got in the article, he says, success isn't measured by bank account balance, what kind of car you drive, and the kind of clothes you wear, and where you spend your vacations. It's much more about the amount of joy, fulfillment, and happiness you can wring out of each day. So if you're celebrating these small successes, you're going to find successes every day. Even if it's a kind of a crappy day, try to find something that worked out right for you and celebrate it in a small way. Because I sell, Gary, here's a small success. If I drop a lid, like a peanut butter jar lid, I drop it, I will yell face up at that lid as it spins, and then if it lands face up, I'm happy. Like, for a good 5 minutes, I'm happy that the peanut butter jar landed face up and it didn't get dirty. So that's like a small success. And
small success. You're happy.
Yay. And it had nothing to do with my skill or anything, but celebrate little things in your life. You'll be a happier person as the day goes out if you're celebrating things and you're realizing accomplishments and little things.
Yeah. Like John says, success comes in small packages. And I try to tell myself that every day.
That could also be kind of...
Sorry, Byron.
Oh, man. Okay. So really great article there. And he's got a ton of articles on his website. So we'll probably not use them 3 times in a row, but we will be looking more at this website
we'll probably take a break next week and then probably jump back into it.
Yeah. I wrote a little article, Gary. Maybe we'll use that next week.
Yeah, we could use that.
I'm going to try to do one a month is my new goal. So do a podcast every week and do an article once a month, which is tough because I'm not very good at writing. I don't write good, Gary.
Yeah, but you'll get better.
Yeah, there we go. I got to celebrate the small successes.
Yeah, small success. Each week you get a little bit better.
There we go. So Gary, that kind of wraps up the article. Like I said, go read the article. It's great, and it's a good motivation for anybody on or off the mat. But with that being wrapped up, I think it's time to air our interview with Emily Kwok. So here we go.
He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
He has to strap on a parachute before attempting a flying armbar. PETA has protested his calf slicer. He can knee bar a snake.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Brick podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy to bring Emily Kwok to the BJJ Brick podcast. Emily, thank you for jumping on the phone with us today.
Hey, thanks a lot for working with my schedule and making this happen.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I know you've been recommended to me by multiple listeners, and I'm really excited to get to know you better and get some training advice from you today.
Cool. That's nice to hear.
If someone hasn't heard of you yet, could you give us like a little quick introduction to who you are and maybe a little bit of a history?
Sure. So I suppose most people know me best these days from probably doing some instructionals that you'll find on YouTube. Some of those have been for various websites. Others of them have been for Stefan Kesting's video production. We had a DVD series called How to Defeat Bigger, Stronger Opponent. And I think that series came out at a time where, there was a bit of an audience to have maybe a female instructor. We were kind of testing it out, and it worked out really well. So I think that that's where people are probably most familiar with my name. But granted, I was given that opportunity, or I earned that opportunity through, training and competing in jiu-jitsu for the better half of 14 years, starting out in Canada and taking me to different travels throughout Japan and the United States, and building up a decent competitive resume, a couple, like a Nogi and a Mundial World Championship and all that good stuff.
So you've been very busy, and you do have an impressive competitive background there. Did you get into jiu-jitsu to learn better self-defense, or was it more of a fitness aspect and you wanted to have something to help keep you in shape?
I actually, it's a good question. I never started jiu-jitsu for the sake of jiu-jitsu. I think at the time, I was living in Vancouver and I was about 21, and I worked out quite a bit. I was at the gym 4 or 5 days a week for, 2 or 3 hours a day. And I just found that, lifting weights and running on the treadmill was not getting me into the shape that I wanted to get into. Of course, trying something new like jiu-jitsu was very foreign, but one thing that I really enjoyed about it right away was that it kind of took the work out of working out, and so I quickly sort of jumped on the bandwagon, and it was still pretty new at the time. There wasn't a lot of jiu-jitsu to be found, so I was doing it at a small community center. But yeah, I just kind of picked it up and competed in my first tournament about 6 months into my training, and the rest is history. I really had no idea or no ambition to be where I was now until it just kind of took over my life.
And this, when you started, it was back in about 2001, is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
How was competitions has changed a lot in the years I've been involved with jiu-jitsu, but what was it like back then for you competing?
I wonder how much it's changed from what it was, in particular to where I lived, because I grew up in a city called Vancouver, British Columbia. Most people are familiar with it from the Winter Olympics. And it's an awesome city. It's one of the best, most beautiful cities to live in, and it's incredible to be there. But, the jiu-jitsu scene at the time was just starting off. Now there is a much bigger jiu-jitsu scene, but I think it feels a little bit fractured to me. Like there's a lot of different teams and a lot of different clubs going on. And although there are competitions that are in the area, I think what hasn't changed much is that for those people that are quite ambitious or want to sort of test themselves at a different level in jiu-jitsu, you're having to leave Vancouver to go do those things. So it could be a weekend trip, it could be a week-long trip, but there's a number of local competitions that I think are great for recreational practitioners, but if you actually want to do something a little bit more, you might have to find yourself getting on an airplane or taking a bit of a drive. I think jiu-jitsu competition in general has obviously become a lot more accessible to most of us training throughout North America. When I had started training, the Pan Ams and the Mundials were not held here. You would just hear about people traveling to Brazil to partake in those kind of tournaments. I think the IBJJF has also come a long way in that time. I would hear from friends just like absolutely epic stories of them showing up at dawn to try and just get into the stadium to compete, and they'd have to stand in line for hours and hours to get in. And then once they were in, they might actually miss their fight because they didn't know where it was. And I think it was very different at that time. And now we're in a place where the IBJJF has regional competitions everywhere. And, we have now not only the gi Pan Ams and World Championships, but now you have no gi and pro competitions starting to come out. So I think the opportunities have definitely increased, and I think that those opportunities have also become better quality.
You competed during your first 6 months of training, or right about that mark, and you didn't really have to travel for that. Is that right?
Yeah, so there was, at the time in Vancouver, there were about 2 or 3 tournaments a year,
okay.
And none of them were specific to jiu-jitsu. They were usually combined with other martial art disciplines, and jiu-jitsu would be like a small part of it. So my first competition, I believe, was maybe it was like a Tiger Bomb Invitational, and it had some Taekwondo and pankration and karate and stuff running at the same time. They had jiu-jitsu in a small section of it, and amongst the girls, there were 6 of us that entered to compete, and I had, dieted down and tried to make weight for a particular division and level, only to find that with the 6 of us, they just took all of us together and they said the 3 heaviest and the 3 lightest, no matter what your experience level is, we're just going to throw you in a division together. So very different from what you would experience now. Yeah,
and was that common coming up through doing more and more tournaments? Was it more like you were always going to get thrown in with people of different sizes and skill levels?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's been interesting is in the last few months there have been a lot of articles that have been coming out about the dirty dozen of men or women who have been influential in sort of being pioneers of jiu-jitsu. And some people might know me as I think I did receive my black belt in terms of being a female and a Canadian citizen first, and I'm not sure if I am the first person to win a world championship medal from Canada, but I know that I'm probably amongst the first. And it's interesting because, I have students of my own now, and I certainly have many friends and peers of different levels. And it's always comical to me when people complain about the conditions that they have to compete under.
Yeah.
There was nobody in my division, so they made me go down to Masters 1 instead of Masters 2. And I have to fight guys that, I can fight people that are, 5 to 10 pounds bigger than me, but there's nobody for me in my weight class. And sometimes I just, want to laugh at them because I never had a choice. Like, it was just like, if you want to compete, you just have to take whatever you can get. And taking whatever I could get at the time meant, my very first competition, fighting a blue belt who was 15 pounds bigger than me, my first fight, and then fighting a girl who was 45 pounds bigger than me in my finals. And that it just everything was absolute. Everything was absolute level and weight class because it just was what it was. And from there, there would be some tournaments I would show up to, and it would be the same competitors over and over again. So you would fight the same girls, and if I won, then it would be like, oh, well, hey, one time I was at a tournament and the promoter said, I think a lot of people here would love to see you fight in the absolute division. And I was like, oh, are there women there? No. This is going to be absolute division for the whole tournament, so it's going to be guys. And I said, listen, I don't want to create a scene or anything like that. I just came to compete and have a good time. And I don't want to cause any issues for anybody, even though I'm really flattered that you'd like to have me do that. But, through some encouragement of friends, I jumped into an absolute division with a bunch of guys. And, that was interesting because the first guy didn't want to fight me, so he backed out and I had another opponent. So, it's been slim pickings for my generation.
Yeah.
And I mean, I realize the generation gap isn't that wide in jiu-jitsu because it's growing so much, these days. But the difference of 5 years has been, pretty big. I mean, when they started bringing some of the Pan Am and Mundial competitions to North America, you still had combined belt divisions for females. And when I won the Mundials in 2007, it was a brown-black division. And now you have a proper brown belt and black belt division. I think even if you go back more, historically there were purple, brown, black, and blue, purple, brown, black. And that's just what it was for a lot of us as females. So the other issue too is there haven't been as many females competing and training, for whatever reason, whether they're just not attracted to the sport, the environment was harsh, or priorities, maybe they were in school, they had families. And so sometimes you would show up, and even though you train 6 days a week, there would be one person for you to fight against, or two people to fight against. So it's always a bit of an interesting discussion to talk to people about competitive resumes and what makes you a better competitor or what makes you equal. I mean, I think for a lot of people of my generation, you had to take whatever you could get, and if someone says, oh, well, your gold medal is worth less than this guy over here who's a blue belt and had to fight 8 fights to get to first place. And I'm like, okay, I get it. And that's totally respectable. And absolutely, he's probably had a lot of physical challenges to get to where he's gotten to. But, for some of us where we didn't have a choice, and if we wanted to fight at all, we just had to take whoever was there. And that might have been 1 or 2 fights. I think there should be some respect given to the fact that at least you were still there.
Yeah.
And at least you continued to train, and you continued to show up at tournaments, and you continued to try and find other opponents to compete against, to earn your gold medal, to earn your spot. So, it's always a bit of a back and forth with people because, some people feel like, oh, well, you only had 1 or 2 fights to win that gold medal. And I'm like, yeah, but 1 or 2 fights, and maybe I was like 1 of 10 people in the entire state or the entire province that actually wanted to compete and train this hard for it. So, take that.
Yeah, I think it's, so that's a hard comparison to look. You see a one blue belt male who's got 8 fights and he wins gold, and then a blue belt female who has 1 or 2 matches and wins gold. And I think maybe a way to look at it would be that yes, she won her matches that day, but she did a lot of things off the mat that a lot of other competitors or potential rivals just failed to do. Just the training aspect of it, and there's a reason why there's so few showing up for tournaments is because, like you said, it may be this reason or that. It might be just harder to get into it or train, but maybe the process of this less women showing up at the tournaments is a sign that the mental toughness before the tournament is a hard thing, in the training aspects of it is difficult, and that the fact that there's maybe less of them doesn't make it any less of a medal. It just means that that a lot of the work done beforehand to get people to show up was hard for some people to get past. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I agree with that a lot, and also, it doesn't mean that a woman didn't want it more because she didn't have 8 fights. You know what I mean? And I think that for me is the most disappointing argument that people will throw out there. It's like, oh, but guys, we did more, or we had to fight more people. And I'm like, the women had to fight just as many guys in class to train, to prepare. The fact that that she didn't have 8 fights to get her gold medal that day isn't necessarily a reflection of the fact that she slacked off in her training or she just didn't care. So it's difficult, but I think one of the things that is starting to happen more and more now is you are starting to get a little bit more of a critical mass of women, and you are starting to see women's divisions with 20 or 30 ladies in them, especially if you are able to get out to California or Brazil or some of the larger promotions. And the tide is turning, so that argument isn't going to exist as much. But for those of us who didn't have a choice and just showed up and that's what we did, I mean, I think in many ways you could say that some of these ladies wouldn't have 30 or 40 women in their division if there weren't one or two ladies fighting 10 years ago to just show that women fought at all.
Yeah.
You know, so I appreciate the practitioners and fans out there who can, you know, just give a little bit of respect to people, both genders, who had to be out there and sort of carve a bit of a path in the sport for those of us who had no path to follow.
Yeah, and even back then, it's even harder because you've got less female teammates to rely on and to help bring you onto the team and feel like you're one of the group, I would imagine. But nowadays, you know, it seems like most schools have a small handful of female, at least practitioners that are able to train with people who want to compete. So I don't know. It seems like that as it gets easier and easier for women to join jiu-jitsu because there's more women in it. It seems like that would be it might snowball a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think we always, you know, male or female, you always want to walk into a room and see that, you know, oh, that person kind of is like me, you know, about the same age, maybe about the same fitness level. And you want to find a certain amount of likeness to feel like you're capable of doing it, especially if your ambition is sort of, hey, I just want to try something new and this jiu-jitsu thing looks really cool. Yeah. Can I do it? Or maybe you know somebody who won a tournament and you're like, that's really awesome. I'd like to give something like that a try, but I don't really think I'm in the type of shape, or I don't really think I'm an athlete. It's nice to be able to go into a school and point somebody else out in the room and say, oh, but I'm like them, and if they're doing it, I can do it too. You know, and I always tell people, I think for women that have made it to, you know, brown belt, black belt, at this point in time, if you were one of those people that, you know, always had like a handful of people to fight against and you were like the only woman on the mat, or you were the only female in the school that anybody knew about, you were slightly crazy and really stubborn because you just didn't care.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, gosh darn it, I'm going to learn this jiu-jitsu and I'm going to get good at it, because you had nobody else to relate to. Or one of the other strange dynamics that I think also happens, hopefully it doesn't happen so much now, but I think as creatures, women can be a little bit more catty and emotional. And certainly in my day when I was a white belt and I went to school, if there was a blue belt or a purple belt female on the mat, that was like amazing. You know, that was like looking at a unicorn or like seeing gold. And as much as you would want to train with them or get to know them or sort of be their likeness, there was, I think, there would always be sort of like a little bit of internal competitiveness within the gender group at the school. So it would be like, oh, well, but I don't want to necessarily hold your hand and bring you into the fold because right now I'm really special. And right now I have my pack of guys that I train with and you're not included. I think that sometimes you run into things like that with females if you're not careful with the balance in the school. And I certainly see less of that now and a lot more camaraderie. And you usually find that there's a really nice one group of females, and they're always happy to sort of have another woman in the mix. But you know, it's not an easy land to navigate.
Yeah, I think the ability to welcome somebody in, especially if you're a belt or two higher, says a lot about your confidence and your skill level, and just your ability to just be friendly to somebody who you may not know as well, and just know that if they do get better than you, that's still okay. You know, it's not that. To me, that's what a lot of that's about. Do you have? Can you think back when you were white belt, blue belt? Who was like your favorite type of training partner that you really enjoyed and learned a lot from?
That's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. I think the type of people that I really enjoyed training with were the ones that could appreciate the fact that I wasn't great at anything that I did. But they could tell that I wanted to be great, and they could tell that I wanted to earnestly understand this, you know, art and this sport better. And they would be patient with me and take me under their wing and help me. There were a couple people that I had in Vancouver that were significantly good to me. Like they would always kind of pull me into the fold, have me part of the group. When we would start working technique, if I had no partner, they would pull me aside and say, hey, come work with me. And, when I was a white belt or a blue belt, sometimes these people were purple belts or brown belts, and oftentimes they might be smaller guys. So people that size-wise would get some benefit from training with me, because they might feel that, hey, if I can make her technically better, she'll be good to help me because I'm a smaller dude and I just get, crushed all the time. And they were usually a lot of the people on the team that were serious about jiu-jitsu. I think they could see that I really just wanted to get better at what I was doing, and I wanted to be able to compete better. I didn't have any other motivation to be there other than to learn. I wasn't there to necessarily socialize. It certainly became my social circle, but they always took my ambition pretty seriously. One of my best friends and the person that introduced me to the sport, a gentleman by the name of Roy Duquette, had spent a number of years training in jiu-jitsu in addition to a number of other disciplines. And he had pulled me aside after my first competition and said, hey, you're going to be a world champion one day. And I was like, hey, you're out of your mind, because I've never been competitive or athletic at anything in my life. And I guess at the time he was able to see some sort of potential in me that I couldn't see in myself. And so I think that sometimes that has been the best training partner. And I think that's what we do for each other, right? I see it in my own training partners now or in my students. Sometimes they're not able to see how great their potential is, and our job is to, help bring that out in them. And I think I've benefited the most from people like that, because they've helped me sort of step into the shoes that I wasn't really ready to step into yet.
Do you think hearing that early on, you're going to be a world champion someday, do you think that actually affected you, or do you think that's something that you just took as a nice compliment and moved on?
Oh, it was a total compliment of the moment, and I moved on. I never, in my wildest dreams, ever thought that was in my career path ever. I think I just completely laughed it off and was like, whatever. And I think what helped what helped it happen was that Roy is a personal trainer of a very high level, and has invested himself quite deeply in not only understanding many different fighting disciplines, but backing it up with nutrition and overall well-being and health and weightlifting. And so after that competition, he said, listen, I'm going to train you like an athlete. We're going to start weightlifting. We're going to start doing things as if you are a world champion. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Well, I'll show up to the gym and we'll work out, but that's not really happening. And so he made it very doable for me to start training like somebody who was going to take this a lot more seriously. I still did not believe that was anywhere, in my sights, because at the time, you had to get on a plane and go to Brazil to compete in the World Championships. And definitely at that time, it was maybe like a handful of people, from our area that would go, to make that trek. So it certainly wasn't something that I ever thought would happen. But he started examining my diet. He started having me come to the gym and do different types of lifts and workouts. And gradually what I started to see was a change in my own performance. And at a local level, I was doing very well. And I started competing well at a very young age in my jiu-jitsu career, I think because I took all of the training seriously. I didn't necessarily set unattainable goals. I don't think I was being unrealistic about what I wanted, but I just sort of put the best foot forward for whatever it was that I was doing that day. And that was familiar to me because in high school, even though I tried to play on various sports teams and I was never really that good, I was academically quite strong, and I did a lot of other extracurricular activities, and I had a lot of part-time jobs. So trying to put quality into the daily things, into whatever it was I had in my routine was not foreign to me. So the idea of applying myself physically was like, okay, well, I can try this. I can do that. And I think because I took my training for myself seriously at a very young age, it paid off, because one of the things that I notice now as a teacher and as a coach is that, you know, sometimes we'll have a small competition coming up, like something regional, and I'll have students that will say, hey, you know, Professor, I'd like to go compete in this tournament. And I'll be like, fantastic. How many days a week are you training right now? You know, I'm getting in like 1 or 2 times a week. Sometimes if I can squeeze it, maybe I'll get in 3 times. And I'm like, okay, well, just so you know, I need to see you in here at least 3 times a week, at a bare minimum, 3 times a week. And some people just can't even commit to the bare minimum. You know what I mean? So like, if one thing that's hard to communicate to people is if you're not going to enter a tournament because you want to lose, right?
Yeah.
Most people enter a tournament because they have some aspiration of seeing how they're going to do. They'd like to be able to succeed, and success is going to come in different forms. Like some people, it's definitely that gold medal. For other people, it's beating that one person they lost to at the last tournament. Another person, it's just, I've never done anything like this before, so I just want to show up. But if you want to succeed at something, you're not going to succeed if you're not willing to put in the most that you can put in, and if you're not willing to put in more than everybody else. And I think that's a big barrier for a lot of people that are new to this idea of competing and pushing themselves, because they haven't really set that bar for themselves. And I think one thing that helped me a lot was that I set the bar a little bit earlier in other things in my life, and so I could sort of focus myself that way physically for jiu-jitsu. But, you know, it's definitely something that I sort of pound into people's heads a lot, that like, I can't want the win more than you do. So if you want to win and if you want to do well, you got to meet me halfway and put the best foot forward. And that's been a big lesson I've carried.
Yeah. You mentioned that you would expect a student to show up at least 3 times a week if they wanted to compete. Do you expect them to do off the mat training on the days that they're not there?
The way I look at it is, you know, do the most that you can feasibly do. And it's not, everybody's limitations will be different. You know, some people have families and full-time jobs. Other people are going to school part-time, and they have a lot of spare time they have a lot of spare time in their week. One of the best pieces of advice that I think I ever got when I was going through a lot of mental challenges with the sport, I had gotten to this place where I didn't believe in myself a lot. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got that was very easy for me to hold on to was, okay, well, just train more than the other person, or believe that whatever you're doing is more than anybody else that in your division could be doing. And that in itself is given confidence, right? Like, you put way more hours on the mat or in the gym than all of these other people put together. So you prepared more. And that was a very tangible way of me being able to believe and quantify, you know, the effort I had put forward into this fight. And when I look at some of my students and I say, hey, like, you know, I need you to be on the mat at least 3 times a week, because for me, I feel like 1 time a week is enough for you to just kind of like remember a little bit of what you did the week before. I certainly don't think training 1 time a week is enough for you to learn more, right? If you're able to train 2 times a week, which I think is a pace that a lot of newcomers to the sport will go with, 2 times a week is enough to sort of get that muscle memory working for you and make some slow progress. But if you're training 3 times a week, you're usually able to mix it up a little bit more and push forward. And, you know, anything above 3 times a week is gravy. It's awesome. Now, when I say a minimum of 3 times a week, I'm also not talking world-class competition. I'm talking about something maybe an hour or 2 from your house that's going to be local and bring out other people that are sort of fighting at a recreational level. And anything you can do to supplement that on top would be great, you know? So, like, if they could go do some interval training 2 or 3 times a week to supplement their cardio, or they have some rehab or, strength and conditioning, like that will all benefit your mat time because it'll help you be in better shape and it'll put you in a better frame of mind. And also that might be a little bit more feasible for you to accomplish at home. I know for myself, if I go to the gym, my gym workouts are like 45 minutes. That's a lot less time than a 1.5 hour class for jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
So any amount of preparation that I can put forward into, getting ready for a competition, I definitely say, hey, definitely go for it. And I'm also, being a little bit older, being a little bit broken and wiser, I also lecture my students to make sure they take care of their injuries too. There's a lot of people that kind of push themselves beyond their limit because they're like, oh, but I really want to do this competition, or I just need to do one more this year, or whatever it is, and then they don't take any time off, or they don't do any rehab to counterbalance the damage they're doing to their body by training really hard. That is, I think, a real mistake. So I always advise my students, hey, if you're training and you get injured, if it's the kind of injury that needs rest, take a week off. Nobody's going to die, Or if it's a kind of injury that's a little bit chronic and you can manage it with some therapies, then go to a therapist a couple times a week so that you can keep up your training. But don't just throw yourself all in and think that everything's going to be okay, because it's not going to be okay at one point. You're either going to suffer a major injury, or you're just going to have a critical, massive injury at some point in your career, and then you're going to have to take a long time off. So I try to make sure that I give my students advice that I didn't really have, or that I didn't care to listen to, because I might have not had it at the time.
Yeah, I think that's hard. That's one of the hardest things, to be injured. And for me, the worst injuries are the injuries where I could walk around during the day and feel fine, and then as soon as you get on the mat, it's like, oh yeah, that's bothering me. I shouldn't be rolling today. And and to take off some time to heal up your body is definitely an important thing for the long run of you doing jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
Well, we spoke a little bit about your early competition career and how things were and how the tournaments were ran. What do you see the future of women's jiu-jitsu competition?
Well, I certainly hope that there's more and more women that come out to compete. I also hope to see that there's more, as we sort of touched on a little bit earlier, just a little bit more respect given to the women that do show up. I know that a training mate and sometimes student in the past, Dominica Obluneche, if I even pronounced that correctly, did a fantastic job at the Mundials this year, winning double gold and being, I believe, the youngest person ever to achieve something like that at the black belt level, has started an equal pay for BJJ campaign. And a lot of that was in response to the fact that some tournaments are starting to offer prize money for competitors. Yet another, I think that's a huge step forward also. That was definitely not happening when I was competing. But it's a huge step forward that these promotions are now starting to offer something for the athletes that are really pouring not only their hearts and minds and bodies into this, but also a lot of dollars. It's not cheap. It's not cheap to compete, and it's not cheap to travel around and go and enter a bunch of tournaments and feed yourself and all that business. But while that's a huge step forward, some promotions don't offer women equal pay. Sometimes to the effect of offering women like a quarter of the amount of the prize money that the males receive. And though it's true that there are sometimes more males that enter those divisions, as I said before, the women that show up to compete have not prepared any less, and in some ways may have prepared more, because they know that it's their one shot. They know that they might have to fight people that are bigger than them or more experienced than them. And I hope that the future of jiu-jitsu competition means that there will be more equality given for women. And we're starting to see that a little bit. There are some promotions that I think are taking a more progressive end on that and trying to offer as many women's fights as there are men's fights, or if there's a featured men's fight, then there's a featured women's fight. And I have to say, and I think most of my male friends would agree, some of the women's divisions are getting really exciting these days. And, I think there's a real motivation from females to push the envelope and to show everybody, hey, we do deserve the equal opportunities and the exposure and the money, because we can put on a great show, and sometimes a more exciting show than the guys. So I hope that changes, and it seems like that's going to be the case because, like I said, there's newer promotions that are definitely supporting females, and it just might take a little bit of time, as everything does. But hey, like in 14 years of jiu-jitsu, I think the sport has come a long way. I wish it could have, come a bit further, but there's so much more today than there ever was when I started as a white belt.
What you mentioned that there's several promotions that are doing a good job and are really cutting edge. Could you mention like who this is?
So I don't want to, how shall I say? I don't want to because I don't keep up with tons and tons of promotions, I don't want to mention the wrong name and give the wrong group credibility.
That's fine.
But not that, and it's not because I'm like, oh, I don't want to support this promotion, but I know that recently, probably within the last few months, there was a promotion where there were, I think, like five super fights for guys and 5 super fights for women, or like some sort of tournament of 5. And I believe that the women's divisions were being awarded the same, or it was like an absolute round. And I believe the women's division was being awarded the same amount of money as the men's. And this came shortly after part of the campaign was launched, and there was a lot of people complaining about, hey, how come women don't get enough support, and how come they don't get the same amount of money? And I know that a lot of the female athletes were quite excited about it, and whether it was on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you'd see women talking about, I can't say yet that I'm fighting for sure, but I'm really excited to have this opportunity. It's going to have equal pay for the women, and that's really awesome. I'm not sure if you know specifically. I think I have a good idea of the name of the promotion, but I'm just afraid to announce like the wrong one.
Okay.
So if you remember, you let me know.
I remember it being in the news, and I've read some of those articles, but I don't remember the promotion specifically now.
Yeah.
And that's
so things like that are starting to happen, and I don't know if that they're happening on their own, meaning like they would have just done that on their own anyways, or if the impetus to offer equal pay for the women was also because of the strong reaction that they were getting from the community. So either way, it's a positive thing.
Yeah. And like you said before, it's, money is great, but it's also a bit of respect. It's like, they're doing the same thing, and they're willing to compete with anybody who shows up in their division, and a lot of times outside their division. But it's not just the idea that hey, yeah, she did a great job, she won gold, but the respect of giving the same amount of money that was earned by the guys.
Yeah.
Do you have? I don't know how much money that the guys are winning or versus the girls. Like, do you have any idea about dollars and cents on this?
Off the top of my head, specifically, no. But I will say it. Like, I think some of the better known tournaments like Abu Dhabi or the IBJJF, the women earn significantly less. I mean, I think it's Abu Dhabi that, if I recall correctly, like the men's divisions might win like $10,000 for first place, but a women's division will win like, I don't know, half that amount or not even. I think it's somewhere between maybe $3,000 to $5,000 for first place for female. And I think that might even be on the absolute end. But it's not, most of the time it's almost not even half of what the men's divisions would earn. But it's a fraction thereof. And these are women that are, especially if it's an absolute division, they're showing up and they're taking any fight that they can fight. And these are talented ladies. So, I don't I don't really see how that helps push the sport forward. You know, and you hear the argument, oh, well, but there's not enough talent that comes out, or we have to pull teeth to get the talent. But then you sort of get into a big chicken or the egg question, like debate, right? Because maybe if there was more opportunity for these ladies, more of them could throw themselves into this and be there would be more plentiful athletes to be drawing from, and you would have more ladies devoting themselves to the sport so that you'd have bigger women's divisions in these competitions. It's hard, you know, and my background is actually in the fine arts. I got a degree in the fine arts, and this was it was very similar in the fine arts field, where you would often hear that, you know, you don't have a lot of super famous female artists because of the fact that, you know, a lot of gallery owners and critics would say, listen, females are great. They start making really good art, but it never matures because then they want to go have a family, or they have to go do this, or they have to go do that, and they get distracted. So they never are able to put in all the energy that they can put into being the best artist possible. And it's true. You know, some of us, like myself, we'd like to have babies. You know, there's other things in life that unfortunately the universe only allowed women to do. And so I know for myself, I delayed having a child because I kept feeling like, oh, but just one more competition, or maybe I could get one more gold medal. That's without money. That's with me paying money to the system. So I can't imagine if I actually had the opportunity to earn money back, especially if I was coming from a circumstance where it really mattered. You know, I'm fortunate in that I have a post-secondary education. I've been well experienced in work since I was 14. I was born in a first world country. I have a lot of given opportunities I'm very thankful for. But there are a lot of athletes, male and female, that don't come from that situation. And that $5,000 first prize is their meal ticket, or, you know, like it really, like that money really matters to them. And sometimes different athletes have to pass up different opportunities because they just can't keep putting themselves on the line with nothing to show for it, you know, except for a gold medal. For some of these people, earning some of that cash back will help them continue to train and help continue to make themselves better so that they can, you know, be a leader in the sport. And I think you find that along the way, there's a lot of distractions and a lot of things that can pull people away from that goal because there hasn't been something worth fighting for, you know? So I know a lot of athletes don't have health insurance. So imagine that. I mean, like, yes, jiu-jitsu arguably could be a little bit safer than, let's say, boxing or kickboxing. You're not going to go home with a concussion every night, but major joints can be messed up. Almost everyone I know that's been training and competing for 10 plus years has spine issues. You know what I mean? Like herniations, like severe herniations, nerve issues. If you don't have health insurance, it's crazy. You know? Yeah. It's crazy to think I'm just gonna go out there and throw my whole life into this 5-10 minute match, and I had to pay to come here. Sure, I got on webcast, but that doesn't add up to any dollars in my pocket, you know. So I just think that the risk to win ratio is kind of low, and women put themselves out there just as much as men, the women that are able to. So yeah, I mean, I think if things change, it'll definitely you'll definitely see more women stepping up. Look at women's MMA. Years ago, when I was sort of dabbling in MMA as a fighter coming in, you might be offered $1,000 if you were lucky, or you would be offered a percentage of ticket sales, and you know, maybe a couple $1,000 if you were an experienced fighter. But once you had Gina Carano in the ring, and then now you have Ronda Rousey, some of these women, like there's way more women stepping into MMA now because women are starting to see, oh, well, if I really apply myself and I stick with this, maybe it is worth it. Maybe I can earn a living, you know, and I think that's the issue. You just, with women, the pool has always been so small, and there have been so few women to look up to And then you don't know what happens to those women after they do it for a few years and they go, oh, forget this, I'm not really making any money, I should just get a job. Then they go, okay, I guess it's not for me. So like I said, now you're starting to see a little bit more of a critical mass, but it would be lovely to see more women that feel that they can earn a living and a real living wage off of competing. I don't know if that's happening yet, but I would like to hope that we're getting close to it.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think we hopefully we're making steps that direction, and definitely as more and equal money is put into the equation, more people will show up and try to get that money. It seems like to me. Yeah, you've mentioned a little bit about balancing family and making decisions like between training and starting a family. How has this affected your training and what you're doing now?
It's been a big shift in priorities that I'm okay with. I was 32 before I decided to start trying for a child, and I certainly would have loved to have had a child earlier on, but I had switched over to Marcelo's team when I was about 28, 29, and I had come off of a pretty bad, I don't want to call it a depression because I wasn't clinically ever diagnosed as that, but a depression in my own way of my competitive abilities. And when I started back at Marcelo's, a lot of it was due to the fact that I still felt like I had a bit of a fire, and I still felt like I wanted to go out there and do something and prove to myself that I wasn't a failure. And doing that, I knew that I would need to concentrate my abilities, and also coming into a new school, a new team, a new system, I had to try and learn their ways. And the first year and a half at Marcelo's was really difficult because I wasn't familiar with his game. I wasn't familiar with, how his different techniques and his movements. And I did want to try and throw myself into it. So I did. I called it my black belt, white belt stage. I go through that a lot now. But that was like my severe black belt, white belt stage. And I've been fortunate in that although I've always been employed, my husband is a firefighter and he has fantastic health insurance and he's extremely supportive of what I do. So me having to go out and, make six figures at a day job was not something that I needed to do. Any income that I brought in was obviously welcome, and I certainly always had a professional job, but the pressure on me was not there financially. So I could afford to work, and train at the same time, or work part-time and do a lot of training. And I trained a lot, for the time. I often say that my generation of competition was a period where hobbyists could compete at a world-class level. I was not a full-time athlete in the sense of I had to have a job to support myself so that I could continue to train and travel. When I say, professional athletes, like you have men and women now that only train jiu-jitsu 7 days a week, and if they make money, it might be from doing a seminar here and there, but they don't really have any obligation to anybody else other than to themselves to train, right? And that's, I think, increasingly the trend in the high level competition these days. But in my time, and I don't even think we're going back that far, it's really been the last 5 years that you've seen more of a switchover. A lot of us had day jobs, and I would work from 9 to 5, and then I would train all night. I would train 6 or 7 days a week, and I would supplement that with strength and conditioning. And I think that during, sorry, my daughter just came home.
Okay.
Sorry, can you ask the question again? Because now I just lost my train of thought.
We were just talking about it's kind of funny, the work and jiu-jitsu life balance, I guess.
Oh.
It's kind of ironic.
Yeah, so there you go. So what I found is, when I had gone and competed for Marcelo's team for a little bit, and I'd had some reasonable success, I started getting to the point where I was a bit anxious to start trying for a family because, they talk about 35 being, you're getting up to an advanced maternal age and all this business. So I figured, if I start when I'm like 32 or 33 and give it a few years, hopefully, if we're blessed with a child before I'm 35, that would be great. So I kind of started to switch gears. And when I made that switch, when I switched gears, it was very conscious. All the time that I would have spent putting into myself, training to prepare for competitions, all the time that I would have spent on the weekends just, doing whatever I needed to do for myself, all the hours of sleep that I got at night that I don't get as much anymore, all of that was consciously put on the back burner so that I could try to have a life outside of jiu-jitsu. And I had opened my school already in Princeton with Art Kinds. And my husband and I had a wedding ceremony, and, I put a little bit more energy into being a teacher and a mentor, and started trying to have a family. And my husband and I were really, really fortunate to have a child quite early on in that process. And I love every second of it, every second of my day that I get to spend with her that I could have or would be spending on the mats. I would not trade for anything because she's just really precious at this age. She's a little over 2, and she's discovering the world, and, she's joyful about everything. And it's pretty awesome to get to experience life through a little person's eyes and to just be able to be next to that and to know that that little person adores you to bits and pieces and needs you. The time that I spent competing was so intensely focused on myself and on, trying to be a better athlete, trying to bring something home for the team, trying to be a good teammate, trying to be, all these things to myself and other people. But I tell you, there's nothing like being something amazing to your little child, and you don't really have to do any of that. you have to be able to feed them and wipe their bums and to put them to sleep. But I have students and I have people ask me, hey, well, are you going to get back into competition one day? Or do you think you're going to compete soon? And I am a competitive person by nature. It's something that I don't think will ever leave me. So I try to be very good at whatever it is that I do. But right now, that energy is focused on trying to be a good mom and trying to be a good teacher and mentor and trying to be a good friend and a person and trying to enjoy life in ways that I didn't allow myself to enjoy before because my focus was on trying to be a good competitor and practitioner. So I respect the energy that athletes have to put into their training too much for me to say that I'm going to go compete when I'm only able to train a handful of times throughout the week. My priority isn't myself anymore. My priority is my students. First of all, I have some sort of a legacy that I'm trying to lead and pass on. And so I try to be a good teacher and a good training mate and coach for the people that come to my school every week. And, I'm pregnant again, so I'm due in February. Maybe when I have this other kid and I get myself into good shape over the next few years, maybe there'll be a good time for me to try and focus myself again on competition. But for right now, that cycle is kind of put on the back burner, and I'm really okay with that. And I think that people that struggle with that notion have to ask themselves what it is that they really want. I made sure that this was something that I wanted before I jumped into it because I had seen plenty of people before and after in jiu-jitsu regret, placing their own dreams on their kids because they didn't have a chance to express it themselves. And I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to make sure that I did what I wanted to do for myself so that my kid could be their own person and do their own thing. So, I'm very happy and very content with the time that I give myself to be with my family and the time that I give myself to be on the mat. And I understand that can change over the years. And I just try to take each day as it comes. And, I'm sure some days I'm a better mom than I am a teacher, and other days I'm a better teacher than I am a student, and all those things. But Jiu-Jitsu, I always tell people, Jiu-Jitsu is not going anywhere. Nobody's going to learn the secret moves the day that you don't show up. So this is what it is. My friend Valerie Worthington expresses it best when she says she's often heard that having a relationship with Jiu-Jitsu is very much like a marriage, and if you're in it for the long run, you got to ride some ups and downs. So.
Yeah, that's well said. And you're such a competitive person, and now you, mom, I think you need to get one of those shirts that says number one mom in the world, or world's best mom. I think might satisfy some of that desire. And congratulations on the upcoming baby. That's exciting.
Thank you.
And you did mention something briefly about not wanting to push your kids into anything. Just briefly, I want to talk a little bit about kids class and parents' expectations and how those, how you like to deal with those and what you want kids to get out of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. So we have a pretty fun group of kids at our school. I think when I've seen kids in competitions, not necessarily my own students, I see a lot of joy and I see a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And I see, I see a lot of methods and a lot of different approaches to competition when I see it, and what it is that parents are hoping their children get out of jiu-jitsu. I think if I look at it from a children's perspective, like what do I want kids to get out of it? I want kids first and foremost to show up and enjoy what they're doing. I want them to have a good time. I want them to feel empowered by what they do. I mean, it's not that much different from what I would want an adult to feel. I want them to feel like they can and that they are capable of doing amazing things with themselves, because that is the type of training that will stick with them their entire lives. And you're never too late to learn that. You can learn that at 5 years old and you can learn that at 50 years old, that you are a powerful human being. And if you set your mind to it, you can pretty much just about do anything. That's what I think I just want holistically for a child that would come into our program or that would be training anywhere. If you take it a step further and, you look at, I want my child to compete, or what lessons could there be from competing? There's some tournaments out there that sort of have kids fight and everybody gets a gold medal at the end of the day. I don't really think that teaches anybody anything.
Yeah.
I think I want children to gain a strong sense of self. I want children to understand that it's okay to put your best foot forward, and to know that it's not always going to be easy. Sometimes it's going to be tough. Sometimes you're going to lose. Sometimes you're not going to have the desired outcome, but that you can pick yourself back up and go do it again, and eventually you will find some success in it. I think there's a lot of very powerful lessons to be learned from training, and we can only learn those things if we allow ourselves to learn them. And I'm not a coddler. Everyone that knows me very well knows that you don't come to me if you need to be coddled. And same goes for the kids. I try not to be mean to them, but if you're upset that another little kid took you down today, that's okay. Like, have your moment and be upset, but understand that the only way to make it better is for you to get back up and get in there and learn to take down and go back at it. There's nothing to be gained in life from turning away and running away from a challenge. And I love seeing little kids just be resilient and believe in themselves. I think one of my favorite things is when we get children in class who just are invincible, meaning like they don't think that anything will stand in their way. I have 4-year-old girls that will show up and tell you that they're going to beat you down, or that, you put a little 4-year-old kid in class with a 6-year-old and you tell them to do a double leg takedown and mount someone, and they do. They don't understand what fear is yet. They don't understand what apprehension is yet. They just have such a strong fear sense of self. And I think that's a huge quality, like something that I wish that we didn't lose as we got older in life. And those are the things that I love to see in our little kids.
Yeah, those are great traits that can be developed at that young age there. You do tell me a little bit about groundswell grappling.
So it's a company that goes back to, I think, 2009, and Val Worthington and I had started the company off with Felicia O and Elena Hardy, and initially it started off as a women's grappling camp, and it was just sort of this opportunity to get women together to train. And initially it was like, wow, like, what is this? Do you think people would actually want to show up? And they did. They showed up multiple times, and we're like, oh, so there are women out there that want to get together and train and learn from other females. And it's since then metamorphosized a little bit into something that I think is greater than itself. Hannette Stack came on board with us and as a principal instructor. And one of the things that I think we've gravitated more into these days is still offering women's camps and still offering those opportunities to learn from each other and to learn from sometimes featured guests, world-class instructors. We're going to have a camp in Princeton in January with Dominica, which is kind of cool because she came to us as a camper, and now she's going to come and be an instructor. But one thing that's also been important to us is to try to set an example and recognize that we as females are good enough to teach anybody.
Yeah.
So we ventured in the last couple of years to start doing some workshops with co-ed groups and trying to provide an ethically sound environment to learn jiu-jitsu in. So this came to us because we would have often complaints from training partners, spouses, peers of women that would come to our camps. The men around them would show up and be like, why don't you guys ever do anything for us? Like, I would like to go to a seminar with you, or, when are you going to offer our camp so that guys could come? And initially, I think it was a foreign idea to even us, because we were like, would they even want to show up? Like, this is kind of weird. Like, would guys want to learn from us? And one day we decided we would try to give it a shot, and it was probably one of the most rewarding experiences we'd ever had, because one of the dark sides of jiu-jitsu, I think, is that you do have a lot of sort of cult leadership. You do have a lot of people who were talented athletes or, good practitioners that fell into the role of being an instructor, but that are not naturally leaders, nor should they actually be leaders, because they're very insecure and flawed individuals, So what I've seen time and time again is you see very abusive relationships between largely male instructors, male black belt instructors, and their students. And those students could be male or female. But there's sometimes like an unhealthy power flow and environment that gets created. And specifically what I mean to that is either mental or physical bullying from that instructor. And in the case of bringing females into the picture, you see a lot of cases of rape and sexual assault and harassment. So one angle that I think is interesting that we as females provide is I think women don't necessarily see leadership though it does happen, you won't find a lot of women that are going to go about and lead in the same type of abusive manners because they've maybe been subject to it themselves. And a lot of us have often been minorities in our training environments, and we often will look at situations and be like, "Gee, I wish there was a changing room for the women," or "Gee, I wish there was a little bit more credibility given to the two females that that showed up to class today, and it was their first class, and that was like a really big deal, and maybe other students can relate to that, but it never gets brought up because everybody's sort of more invested in tapping each other out or being a tough guy on the mats. And I think we're a little bit softer in the way that we manage and nurture relationships. And for some people, I'm sure that's like not attractive at all. We're like, well, I don't want to train with a bunch of sissies. But the way that we look at it, I think, is that we might be able to bring a different energy to leadership and culture in a jiu-jitsu environment. And we are more nurturing by nature. That's what we were built to do. So our camps have always been different from other types of camps and seminars, in that we do include a component that is more holistic, whether it's a roundtable discussion about an important issue in jiu-jitsu. Sometimes it's nutrition, sometimes it's about physical mobility. But we try to make it a complete experience, because we all know that for those of us who really love jiu-jitsu, it's not just about showing up to train anymore. It's about our relationships to ourselves, to our bodies, to the people around us, to our families. You know, it becomes more than what it just appears to be. And when we've done these co-ed camps, we've often found that some of the feedback that we get from our males, and we've had our range from white belt to black belt males come and participate, is that they're like, holy smokes, you know, like, guys have feelings and have apprehensions and fears and issues the same way that women do. But because of the nature of a guy's environment, they might not necessarily be heard or respected or appreciated for vocalizing their fears or their issues, right? Because for a lot of guys, it's just sort of like, just act tough, and if you don't like it, suck it up. As a woman, though, or like in a female-dominated environment, what's really interesting is that we are able to often have dialogue with co-ed groups that a lot of single-ed groups, like single-sex groups, probably don't have access to, because of the nature of communication between men and men versus women and women versus men and women. And so we found that having these co-ed events has been really rewarding, because there's a level of communication that exists between all the participants that I think is very unique and doesn't often happen in schools. And it's a little bit more of a balanced environment, because we still get a very big draw from the females. So I think part of what we would like to do is to show people out there that there's an alternative to the type of places that you train jiu-jitsu in and how you learn your jiu-jitsu, and that you have a choice to be in an environment where you're comfortable, not only with your peers, but, you know, with your teachers, and that you can have a dialogue with these people and not be afraid of being called out or disrespected or ridiculed. And so, you know, we've largely built most of our momentum off of doing seminars and camps. We would like to get more into other avenues, whether it be in consulting. Val's in the process of writing a book. I've certainly had my DVDs, and hopefully, you know, as a group, we can put some more material out together in the future. But I guess we just want to show that there's different ways to do things. And I think the jiu-jitsu environment has largely, like the community has largely been dominated by men for a long time. And that's what people are used to. You know, and I think we just have a slightly different way of looking at things, and we want to share that, and hopefully it resonates with people.
Yeah, I think it is. I think early on when I was doing jiu-jitsu, if given the opportunity to train with a great competitor, I would jump all over it, and I would sometimes be disappointed that either sometimes maybe a lack of really caring whether I was getting the picture or not, or maybe just a communication barrier between the student and teacher was there sometimes, and I was like, I just trained with somebody who's great at jiu-jitsu, and I don't know what I got out of it. And then some days I would train with people who were purple belts or just different, and the communication was like right on par, is perfect, and I just learned so much about whatever topic I was wanting to learn about in jiu-jitsu. And I think that, you know, to be a good teacher is not really important to be a great competitor or a great person that could perform well necessarily, but communication is huge on that. And then the ability to listen and to observe the student and to make changes in what you're seeing the student do. Those are all things that I think a great teacher needs to have, and that oftentimes a competitor doesn't have. And a lot of times it's even worse, because the competitor picks up jiu-jitsu easily sometimes. And so for me to struggle and to have trouble with something, it makes that person hard to even get on my same level. And like, why are you having a hard time getting your hips to move that way? Like, I'm struggling with this, and you can't understand why I'm struggling with this. It was easy for you as a top-notch competitor.
Yes.
So I think that there's definitely a niche there, and people want to learn jiu-jitsu and get better at jiu-jitsu. They don't being able to train with world-class competitors is great, but in the end of the day, at the end of the year, you want to have been better at jiu-jitsu for the things you've done and put into it there. And you also mentioned the same thing about leadership. To become a great competitor, you kind of alluded to it. It's you got to spend time on yourself to become a great competitor. That's one way or another. It's kind of a self-centered, or you could maybe say selfish act that you are pursuing there. To be a great leader, it's the opposite. You need to spend time with others. You need to develop a team. You need to deal with people and situations that come up. And those can be like polar opposite traits that people may or may not have.
Yeah.
So I think you mentioned
they're
a lot
very,
there.
very different skill sets, and I think for a long time in the jiu-jitsu community, I don't know why, but maybe just there hasn't been, people just haven't seen the other side of the leaf. You know what I mean? Like there's just been no differentiation between being a good instructor, being a good competitor, being a good leader. Like these are all different things.
Yeah.
And I've certainly made the mistake many times myself of believing that my jiu-jitsu instructor, who most of the time has been a formidable competitor, is also a good leader. And this has been a very big mistake in my life. And it's often hurt me deeply. And I say that because as a competitor, I look to this person for leadership and advice and guidance. And sometimes those people don't give two craps about you. They really don't care. Sometimes they don't want to be bothered with you. And I think it's okay. Like I want to mention, I think it's okay to be selfish in life. I believe everybody has to be. In order to maintain any sense of self, you have to be. And so if you want to spend the time to be a great competitor or spend 5 hours on yourself every week, I say go do it if it makes you a better you. But if it makes you a better you and a worse crappy person for everybody else, that's not okay. And sometimes I've seen, more often than not in school, you get these like megalomaniacs and these instructors with these crazy egos that like just don't understand people. And they're managing people's lives. And the people that go to them to learn trust these individuals with a big part of themselves. You know, like you're vulnerable on the mats because you're learning and you're getting beat up and you're trying to make sense of something that you don't know. You give this person money every month and you expect to somehow make some progress. And I just see a lot of people get taken advantage of, and it's not right. Yeah. And so what we tried to do is we tried to professionalize this relationship a little bit more and to tell people, hey, we actively work on our leadership skills and we actively work on trying to build a healthier community. Hannette co-owns her school in Chicago with her husband, Andre, who many people know is probably one of the scariest but very official and fair referees for the IBJJF. I've actively worked on leadership skills since I was a teenager. I was always in different types of groups, and it's always been something that's been very important to me. And Val she has a doctorate in, I believe, educational instruction or something really academic and wonderful. So these are skills that I think sometimes underrated, sometimes not necessarily the first to be appreciated, but they are certainly the things that people appreciate the most. You know, we have an incredible group of people that come to our events. It's highly unusual when you think about people having to spend money to get on a plane, train, or automobile to travel to you, to save the money to stay in a hotel and pay for expenses in addition to camp fees, to come spend a weekend, to be part of a different type of community, and to go home hopefully a little bit more fulfilled and to feel like they made connections with people all over the country that are just like them. We've served everything from super high-level competitors to 55-year-old executives to 62-year-old women who have never done jiu-jitsu a day in their life and just want to give it a try. You know, so it's incredibly awesome to be able to to partake in someone's life on that level, and to let them know, like, we appreciate the fact that you came here and that you're trusting us with part of your jiu-jitsu experience, and we hope that you get something out of this too. So we have a really nice group of people, a very high return rate with our camps. About 50% of all of our registrations are returnees, and of that 50%, about 25% of them drag a new friend with them, and then we have another sort of organic 25% that just sort of finds us over the internet. And it's great. It's an intimate group. It's a solid group, and I would much rather have, 100 really solid, awesome, cool human beings around me than to have 1,000 people that just want to, be up my butt because I'm really hot right now for a few years. But eventually the spotlight fades and I don't really care about you. I just care about your $100 for this one weekend. And, we all forget who we are in a few years. That's, to me, the relationships in my life are the things that make me feel like a better person and that give me gratitude. And so those types of relationships, I think, are the things that I hold dear to me and that I want to have grow. And I don't care if it's with a white belt or a black belt or whoever. I think that those types of moments are really special. So we try to create an experience for people to let their guard down and be like, hey, we understand that you love jiu-jitsu, so do we, but we also understand that you might have some issues with it, and it's okay to talk about that here, and it's okay for you to ask us questions. There's I think a long-standing sort of fear in some schools. It's not appropriate to talk to the instructor about things not related to technique, or to not, it's not appropriate to ask questions that aren't sort of in the light of the school. So let's say, Professor, I want to go to the seminar led by so-and-so, but that particular athlete is not an athlete that's on your team. So you might get scolded for it and told you're never allowed to train with people outside of our school, even though you're a 45-year-old grown-ass adult who makes a paycheck and pays this person like $250 a month, but you get treated like a child. We just kind of try to do away with a lot of the politics, and we try to do away with a lot of the rules in that sense. With the events that we do, and we try to make it a safe place for people to learn and to ultimately feel like they're getting better at they're reaching their goals and they're getting better at what they do.
I love it. What's the best way that somebody could keep up with Groundswell and figure out what's going on?
So we are in the middle of a very long website revamp. So we have a Facebook page that people can check us out on, Groundswell Grappling. I believe there's probably an old page up right now for groundswellgrappling.com, but within the next month or two, we hope to have our new site up so that it looks a little bit more polished. But it's a bit of an organic thing, but we're okay with that. And like I said, we have a phenomenal group of individuals around us that I don't think we would continue to do what we do if it wasn't for the type of community that is built around us and said, hey, you guys are doing something really important. Please don't stop doing it because more people need to do this too. So sometimes we don't really know what the right answer is, but we just know what we feel could be good and what we feel we wished we had at some point. So I guess you could say we're trying to fill some gaps out there.
That's great, and definitely keep up the hard work with that, and I think it's going to benefit a lot of people. Emily, what's a great way for somebody to get in contact with you or to see what you're up to?
So I think, once again, I'm really bad at keeping up with my own stuff. I'm not sure if you can go to emilykwok.com anymore. It might lead you to my school website, which is princetonbjj.com. You can certainly reach me through there. And I also have a Facebook page that you could friend me on if you like. I've been kind of lazy about keeping up with my own stuff. So you could try any of those avenues.
That sounds good. I'll put links to those on the show notes there. Do you have any sponsors you want to mention or anybody you want to thank?
There's always good people to thank. But I would say that the entities or the people that are probably closest to me are well known. everybody at Princeton BJJ, and certainly my business partner there, Art Hines, who holds the fort down if I'm off doing something out there. And we have awesome students, best in the world. Just a really, really awesome community of people. And everybody at GGC, we do some important stuff, and I think we're going to continue to do so. I love all the people that, I haven't been able to train with them a little while because of the bun in the oven, but certainly the whole team at Marcelo Garcia in New York, and Marcelo and Tachi and Josh, the people who make it all happen, and my family and my friends and all that good stuff. So, yeah, nobody's major.
Well,
just the people
a great
that keep
team
me
of
alive
support.
every day.
It sounds like you have a great team of support there, and that's definitely important. And in your many endeavors that you're working on and taking on.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important to, the people that I keep close to me certainly boost me up when I'm down, keep me humble when I need to be kept humble, and they just help me get by day to day. And I have to say, as my life has changed shape with, family and whatnot, it's not always easy every day, so it's nice to have people to lean on, and that would not happen if there wasn't a lot of thought or maintenance put into those relationships. So I really do appreciate the people that choose to be in my crazy world.
That's good.
And I thank people like you who ask me to talk about this.
Oh, that's funny. It's good to reflect on what you have and the people who are in your life that are important to you, and coming up on Thanksgiving here. So.
I think it changes. I think it changes over the years, and I just want to say, I'm just really grateful for the life that I have. I have a pretty awesome life, if I might say so myself, and that's, some of it was expected and some of it wasn't, and I hope to not take it for granted, and I've had some really big ups, and I've also had some really big downs, and I'm 35 now, so who knows what the rest of my life will bring. But it's an important thing to recognize the people around you that help you be the best version of yourself every day. Sometimes that's painful, but that's a lesson that I really take home with me, because the people that really care about you and the people that really want the best for your development will sometimes have to teach you or tell you the things that you don't want to hear. And I have to say that, it's for those of you out there who have aspirations to do amazing things, there's nothing better than having a really trusted community around you. And if you don't have one, to go in search of it, and really build genuine relationships, because that's what matters at the end of the day. It's interesting. Before this interview, I was listening to a podcast on the Tim Ferriss show, and it was with Rick Rubin, and it was an interesting podcast because, when we talk about sort of being, our best version of ourselves, he talks a lot about different people that have been in his life and influenced him. And a lot of those people are ones who sort of never back down and are always constantly trying to be a better version of themselves every day. And that's all you have. And when you look at happiness and you look at success, those things can mean different things to many different people. But I think, success for me, and success in ways that he'd also defined it, is not necessarily financial, but it's being happy. And I am, I'm a pretty happy person. So I hope that for your listeners out there that they have that in their jiu-jitsu and non-jiu-jitsu lives. Yes.
It makes my day to hear that you're a happy person and you consider yourself to have an awesome life, and I consider myself the same, and it's very positive to hear people actually say that and not just think it to themselves or not even really realize what you have day to day and how great things are. So, really appreciate you sharing that.
I'm with you.
Well, cool.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us, and I'm sure the audience has learned a lot from you, and it's been a very fun conversation for me.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, a big thank you for Emily Kwok for giving us the interview. A lot of great information coming from Emily today, and I really appreciate her sharing that with the audience. And I hope and I feel like this is going to help people better understand grappling and get a better sense of what they should be doing on the mat, you know. And she did talk a little bit about like the leadership role that people play in jiu-jitsu, and some people aren't fit for the leadership role that they are in, you know, just because you have a black belt, or just because you have a school or a podcast or whatever. Like, it's just because you're doesn't mean that you are the right person to lead a group of people. And
wait, Byron, you said just because you have a podcast?
I threw that in. She didn't actually say that, so
because that's the only reason I got on this podcast. I wanted to be a leader.
Well, I think that probably next episode, Gary, or maybe the next two. So don't give up yet, Gary.
Okay,
it'll happen. But we've all been. If you've trained long enough, you've got to train with somebody who's a phenomenal athlete, and hopefully they were also a good teacher. But not everybody who's an athlete is a good teacher, and I think that's important to remember, because you could come away like, I didn't learn anything from that person. That's frustrating. And I think that with the groundswell and what they're doing together, you know, they're putting on great seminars and great. It's a great vehicle to learn jiu-jitsu. So go by there and check out that Facebook page. And I went on their website today, and it still was being worked on. And but maybe by the time this comes out, it'll be up and running. But definitely hit them up on the Facebook page and like their page and keep up with them. They're great training opportunities with them. Speaking of Facebook, find Gary and I on Facebook. We have BJJ Brick, Facebook.com/BJJ or we're on Twitter, YouTube, a lot of social media. I wouldn't say most because there's a million of them out there, but we're on quite a few, and we love to interact with you guys on social media. So.
Yep, and hey, speaking of social media, if you go onto iTunes, give us a review on iTunes. Let us know how we are. If you try to make it funny, we love funny reviews. Send us an email to either to bjjbrick@gmail.com or on Facebook, and let us know that was you, and we'll send you out a circular BJJ Brick gi patch, so you'll look sharp there on the mats, and everybody can say, "Man, you listen to that show too?" And they'll say, "Yep, Byron's my favorite."
Oh, what was that ugly guy on the gi patch? And this is, unfortunately, this is only for the people who live in the United States, because we just mail it out for free, and we're trying to save money, save some costs. But if you want to get us a review, no matter where you are, we really appreciate that. And we love reading those on the air when we get a few of them saved up together. It's always a good time, Gary.
Always a good time, and other good times also come with rolling. So if you happen to be in the Midwest, coming through Wichita, Kansas, send us a line. Let us know you're here. We'd love to train with you, and we can both share the art of jiu-jitsu and have some fun.
Speaking of sharing the art of jiu-jitsu, if you have a friend and you enjoy this podcast, maybe it's a good idea to tell your friend about this podcast and share it with them. You can do that online, or you just tell them at the gym, hey, check out this podcast. I like this particular episode. This was a great one. So maybe this was your episode that you recommend. But we really appreciate that when people refer us to their friends. More friends for us, Gary.
More friends for us. And like I said, the only reason I'm doing this is for friends in leadership positions.
Leadership positions, that's right.
Yep. Hey, don't forget to tune in next week. We have another awesome show. We have Sarah Black. We're going to do an interview with her, and she's a big-time competitor, judo and jiu-jitsu, and talks about how she competes and blends both those arts together. So, going to be a good time next week, and tune in to listen to Sarah Black.
We're all looking forward to that, and the entire episode we've been looking forward to hearing about Gary's next ebook.
My next ebook, Byron, what would it be?
Well, I don't really know what it's going to be, but I know what the title of it is.
Okay, what's the title?
It's like I think it's going to be.
I'll tell you about it.
I think it's going to be like a technique book because it's called The Sugar Sweep. Why it works and why it's so sweet. So I've never heard of this sweep before, Gary. What's up with this?
Well, sometimes you just got to have a little bit of sugar in your life. Most people walk around and don't pay attention to other people. But I tell you, you walk around, you see somebody, you throw that sugar out, you're going to sweep them off their feet.
Oh.
It's going to happen. Yep. It's called the Sugar Sweep. It's really popular on Tinder and sites like that.
So this isn't. I thought this would be a technique thing. This is maybe a technique, but not a jiu-jitsu technique. This is a matchmaking thing.
Yeah, matchmaking. It's a sugar sweep.
So you find that lovable someone that you are a little shy about approaching, and you get some sugar. Is a packet of sugar enough? I don't know if is that enough sugar to use, or do you need more than that?
Sometimes you need more, depending on the type of person you are. Me, I need a lot more, but some people can get away with less sugar.
Depends how sweet you are.
Yep. Short and sweet.
Just like our friend Craig. So you get a handful of the sugar and you kind of just hit this person you don't really know yet with the sugar?
Yep. And you sweep them right off their feet. So definitely check it out. It's great for, all you single people. And, I guess some of the married people would probably like it too. Bring some life back. Yeah.
So, with your current spouse, right?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
When my wife comes home tonight from work, I'm gonna get over some of that sugar. I guess I gotta.
Hey, if that doesn't work, just drop the peanut butter lid and start yelling, "Top, top."
Hey, I think I should have my vacuum ready because I'm gonna have a mess to clean up after the sugar thing. Any advice?
Yeah, definitely make sure you have a vacuum.
Because it's going to make a mess. But anyway, it sounds like a great book. I didn't know you were such the romantic advice giver, Gary. This is a new avenue for us.
Some people call me the jack of all trades. And I totally agree with
it. Okay, that sounds interesting. I don't know. I'm laughing pretty hard over here, Gary. I don't know what's up with that. But yeah, next week, Sarah Black, and as always, stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.